everybody, here comes the monopolist. I hope you enjoyed the lunch. I'm gonna steal about 20-25 minutes out of your time. And I'm gonna tell you from the work I'm doing. I've been part of a lot of disruptive markets. I've been in the telecom industry, was actually part of buying one of the operators here in Latvia many years ago when I was the CEO of Tele2. I've been into the airline business. I'm into the energy sector. And so I'm going to share my experience because I'm standing there deep in the shit. I'm trying to handle all this which are happening throughout the world. And I'm not going to talk so much about technique, etc. So the first technical challenge for me is to get to the next slide. The red one. Yeah, a lot of things are happening, as you probably know. Who could guess that some years ago that the largest transport company in value don't own a single car? What's that? It's Uber. Who could guess a couple of years ago that the largest electrical car company actually skipped the dealers, which were essential for the automotive industry a couple of years ago? And on top of that, they send out the car in space. So, bon voyage. But then we are getting into IKEA. And some friends to me says to me, "Oh, Lars, you have a happy assignment because people need to sit. People need to sleep. That will always be the case." And then I try to tell them that, you bet. There are a lot of things happening here too. 3-4 years ago, the e-commerce within IKEA was close to zero. Today, it represents roughly 5% of the turnover. But I would say the world has always been disruptive. And I would say the e-commerce part is actually not more than advanced mail order. And so we should really take it serious, and I think that there are a lot of things to be done, and I will take you through that. The founder of IKEA, Ingvar Kamprad, passed away a couple of months ago. And as you probably know, we have the closest store here in your region is in I have to say, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Did actually won the best IKEA store prize for 2017. So we are doing great here. It is a company who's roughly 70 years old. We have about 1 billion people visiting us. And I can see here we see some clear trends throughout the world. In the US, people up to 25 years, 60% has never been into an IKEA store. 60% has never been into an IKEA store. So I think there are a lot of things happening. Another thing which we can see in the States then, and in the UK, if people have to stay in line more than 3 people, they leave. It's also an effect of the e-commerce era. I have then had the opportunity to work with some of the most popular or successful entrepreneurs in Sweden. To left, we have Ingvar Kamprad, the founder of IKEA. We had also Erling Persson and Jan Stenbeck, who have founded the Tele2 Metro and Viasat. I do get the question very often from journalists saying that, what do they have in common? And they have one thing in common, which will be as important going forward as it is today. It is the interest of the customer interface. So let me take a couple of examples then. Jan Stenbeck, that guy to the right there. When I was the CEO of Tele2, I called him up and said, there is a mobile operator in Latvia for sale. Do you think we should buy it? Because it was some 150 million euros. And then he said, oh, if it feels good in your stomach, buy it. But I said, Jan, don't you want to have a business plan? And now you're making me disappointed. You know, a business plan is just a lot of time spent, but not any value added. So that decision took roughly 20 minutes. But when it came to the color of the SIM card, the card you put into the telephone, I could have been fired 3 times in a week. He calls me and said, what kind of color should we have on the SIM card? I said, oh, maybe we should have red, because that's easy then when you drop it, you can find it. And that's the most stupid I've heard. The darker it is, the more quality it signals. So of course it should be dark. So you have another try. So I came back and said, dark blue. How can you be so stupid saying dark blue? Black is darker than dark blue. So in the end of the day, it became black. So what I'm trying to say here, that this kind of things with the customer, they are always concentrating on that. And I think that's one of the reasons for their success. No matter how big they get, they are still keeping the customer very close to the heart. I will come back to that later. When I enter into some of these companies who are disruptive, I see immediately a lot of holy cows. And I have some examples from IKEA, which is ridiculous. I mean, when we started with e-commerce and people wanted to get it delivered, the more they bought, the more expensive it gets. It's stupid, because e-commerce is the other way around. The more you buy, the lower the price of the transport. But here in IKEA, we said, no, we need to let them come to the stores because that's where they make the purchase. That has changed now. I recognize this in many companies, that you are not recognizing the changes. So when I enter in, I always look on 3 specific things. The first one is, do they have the right customer focus? Very often they don't, because they have some, very often, fat man sitting there in the management saying that this is how it has been, this is the way it should be going forward. You need to make sure that you have the right customer insights in the company. It sounds simple, but it isn't. The second thing is time. As we heard here earlier today, the time is essential. Everything goes so fast. And I spoke to Amazon's in their IT department or development, the IT development department. No project which takes longer than 6 months from idea to implementation is skipped. I can tell you that in IKEA it takes 2.5 years just to make an adjustment. And I think that goes for many of you also. This is the new time. You need to act rapidly. Otherwise, these monopolists will come over you. Consequence management. I find also when when you are going through these kind of changes in the organization, there are some people who are surviving all the time. I think that you need to move people if they don't deliver what's the intention. One example is that when I get into some Swedish companies and are conducting this change, many people comes to me and say that, oh, Lars, I'm so happy you are here, that we are really looking forward to adjust our business case. It is fine until they have to change themselves. And that's very often the case. I spoke about speed. I would like to give you another example when it comes to wrong judgment when it comes to customers. Lead time and estimation of lead time. And I go to the e-commerce part again. We asked people, what's the most important when it comes to delivering and delivering time? Very often you say that, oh, to get the stuff you ordered the day after you placed the order, that's the most important. But in fact, if you ask the customer, it's the delivering time which is the most important, not how many days it takes. And the whole industry is focusing on delivering as fast as possible. But when it comes to the customer, they just want to know exactly when the goods are delivered. So once again, you were not too close to the customer, because then you lead the organization in a total wrong direction. This is probably the most important part of my presentation, is the customer focus. And it got very hot here, so. Customer focus. That's what I've learned then in the organization from IKEA and H&M. And you know, the founder, Ingvar Kamprad, he lived in Switzerland, and he then drove his Golf 1981 from Switzerland up to southern part of Sweden for his holiday. It's close to 1,500 kilometers. And I told Ingvar, I said that nowadays you can fly rather cheap. Now he said, I have to pass Denmark because the beers are much cheaper there. So he piled in beers in his car, and then to Älmhult. And he said, because I do need to have them back, because it's a refund on the bottles. So when he went there for the holiday, he went into the cashier line and asked and talked to the customer, said, what do you think we are doing right? What do you think we are doing wrong? How was the meatballs today? How was the parking space? Was it too small or was it too big? Was it convenient? And then he talks to about 200 to 300 customers. And then, after the 3 days, he goes into the management of IKEA. And then he says, hello, guys. What do you have on the agenda? And then they say, Ingvar, we have this and that and that and that. It's remarkable. I've been talking to 300 customers. They haven't mentioned it. And I think this is happening in most of the companies. You get too far away from the customer. And my hypothesis is that it will get even more important to connect this with the technology going forward. I have another example from H&M. H&M's head office is situated in Stockholm. And I worked there when I was 25 years. And when you are 25, you knew everything. It's a great For some, it lasts for longer. But for me, it was around 25, 26. So I went up to the founder and said to him that, I think it's stupid to have your head office in the middle of the center of Stockholm. It must be too expensive. And then he said, he did not even raise his head. He said, was it anything else you want to teach me? No. Make sure you close the door from the outside then. So I went out, and then he said, Lars, I'm gonna invite you for lunch, but first you need to answer the question why we are situated here. So we went into one shop. For those of you who have been in Stockholm, there's one H&M store, and then next side on the street, it's another one, and then you enter into 3, 4, and then he asked me, Lars, why are we situated here? I don't know. I said, you're a stupid one. I've started to become hungry, so you need to speed it up. So we went into 3 additional shops, and then he asked me again and said, Lars, now you have to answer right, because I'm so hungry. Why are we here? I said, I don't know. The reason for it is that people working in the head office should be able to enter the shops while they have lunch, because then they know what's happening in the stores. The same focus on the customer as Ingvar had, and I think, once again, that's the reason why they are so successful. You say that, then you say to yourself that, yeah, it happens in all other companies, but not in mine. I can promise you it's happening every day, but you need to be able to detect it as quick as possible. I have a lot of Swedish examples. This is one recent example. I would try to explain it, even though it's my son there, Simon Jarnheimer. This is a new hospital in Sweden. I think we have paid 4 billion euros to build it. It's a massive. The board were fired yesterday, just to mention something. My point here is, here, this is what my son got when he broke his arm. And you see it's a little bit tilted, but this is exactly the paper he got. And on top of it, it is related to if you break your leg. It's not the arm. So what I'm trying to say here, you can put 4 billion in infrastructure, but you need to take care of the customer interface. And here is exactly what my example for H&M and IKEA. You don't walk the customer way. And this is happening every day. Every time. So you need to be aware of it. So stay closer to the customer. I have not much time left. Keep it simple. I think we are, one example here I would say is that the worse it comes, you know, I'm sitting in a lot of boards today. The worse it goes for the company, the more material. The board material for IKEA, which has a turnover of roughly 40 billion euros, is about 15 to 20 pages. In SAS, Scandinavian Airline System, I think it's 300. Why should we always try to make it as complicated as possible? Here is my last slide, trying to catch up what I'm trying to say to you. Stay close to the customer. I think that details will be even more important going forward. We made a survey in Tele2 when I was heading that operation, who was the most successful players among the employees. It turned out that they had a couple of things in common. Be on time, call back, don't lie, never park at the customer parking. So why is be on time? Yeah, that's not that bad, even though my time is out here. But you know, you have some people, they are always on time, some are never on time. And then you have the people who never call back. You have the people who always call back. And we have people who lies, don't lies. These important things is very important. Why is it important? Yeah, when I was heading Tele2, and when I look into IKEA, very little of the customer interaction or customer complaints is related to the product. It's mostly related to, you promised to get back to me on Monday, but you didn't get back. You promised to fix this by next Tuesday, but you haven't. So if we can't keep these promises among ourselves in the organization, we will never be able to do it to our customers. That's why it's so important. So the very last then, so never park at the customer parking, is that we were about to employ a head of technique in Tele2. And we had one girl and one boy. And we couldn't decide who should we actually take. So we said, let's take that decision tomorrow. Let's meet tomorrow morning in my office. And then we saw this guy, Frederick, which was the guy. He was parking at the customer parking. And then one guy said that we can't have a technical chief officer who park in the customer parking. And then we said, no, that's true. So let's take Maria instead. And we took Maria. And they said that it can't be true. That's not the way it works. It's exactly the way it works. It is not more complicated. So, thank you very much for listening. I have just been trying to tell you a little bit about simplicity and staying close to the customer will be even more important in the technology world we are heading into. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Sorry, I have to ask this. Can you imagine the big store in Riga, and then you put your car next to the door or the entrance, and suddenly someone, the security, runs out and says, no, you can't put your car here, it's a director's place.
No, that will never happen. It will never happen.
The question is, how come we all know the basics and we still fail to live up to them?
No, I think the reason is that the bigger a company goes or gets, the more far away from the customer. Because, yeah, it's so simple, but you know, I very often meet that when I ask people, have you been out serving the customer? Have you been in the customer care center? They say, oh yeah, I have so much to do. People prioritize wrongly.
So they keep, they're feeling too safe behind the walls or what?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.